1910 was unlike anything the Northern Rockies had ever seen. Old-timers swore they had never known the land so dry, the air so sharp with heat. Rivers that usually roared down from the mountains shrank to trickles. The ground cracked, pine needles crumbled to dust underfoot, and a smell of smoke seemed to linger even on days when no fire was in sight. Small blazes flickered everywhere. Farmers cursed the drought. Loggers wiped sweat from their brows and swung their axes into brittle trunks that snapped almost too easily. Yet nobody truly believed disaster was coming. Not yet. But the young rangers did. The Forest Service's struggle. The U.S. Forest Service was still a child, barely 5 years old. Created by Theodore Roosevelt's vision, it was meant to protect millions of acres of public land from greedy lumber barons and reckless exploitation. Roosevelt's hand-picked chief, Gifford Pinchot, had been fired just months before the firestorm, replaced by a less charismatic leader. Morale was low, funding scarce, and men scattered thin across an empire of wilderness. Most rangers were barely out of their 20s. Many were students, farm boys, or laborers who had signed up for seasonal work. They earned around $60 a month, slept in tents or crude cabins, and often worked alone in mountains where a single mistake could mean death. Yet, despite their inexperience, they carried an almost religious belief in their mission, to guard America's forests. But guarding meant more than planting trees or chasing poachers. In that summer, it meant fire. The first flames. By July, over 1,000 separate fires burned across Montana, Idaho, and Washington. Some were started by lightning, others by sparks from passing trains. Coal engines, the workhorses of the railroads, belched out fiery embers that ignited dry brush along the tracks. Loggers left behind smoldering campfires. Prospectors, cooking beans on open flames, carelessly abandoned them in the morning rush. The Rangers fought back the only way they knew, with muscle and desperation. They cut fire lines, long trenches dug into the soil to block advancing flames. They hauled buckets of water from streams, passing them hand to hand. They set controlled backfires, burning smaller areas ahead of the big fires in hopes of starving them of fuel. But the forests were vast, and the men too few. The fires grew faster than they could be stopped. A nation distracted. The rest of America hardly noticed. In 1910, newspapers were obsessed with politics, boxing matches, and the rising tensions in Europe. The West was far away, mysterious, almost irrelevant to the average citizen in New York or Chicago. News trickled eastward slowly, and even then it was reduced to a paragraph on page 6. Forest fires rage in Idaho, damage heavy. Nobody outside the region realized that what was building was not just another summer wildfire. It was the makings of an apocalypse. Heroes in waiting among the men scattered through the mountains were figures who would soon become legends. Pulaski's stand. Edward Pulaski, a ranger in Idaho, would later lead 45 men into an abandoned mine shaft and save them from certain death. His name would forever be tied to the firefighting tool, the Pulaski axe, still used today. Joe Halm's Riders, a ranger in Montana who rode miles through choking smoke to evacuate entire communities before the flames arrived. The nameless thousands, immigrant laborers, black workers, Native Americans, and prisoners pressed into service, many of whom died unrecorded, their stories lost. They did not yet know their place in history. For now, they were just men with blistered hands and smoke-stung eyes, doing the best they could against a rising tide of fire. The storm approaches. By mid-August, the fires were everywhere. The The sky turned copper red, the sun a faint blood-colored disk behind the haze. Settlers wrote in diaries that their clothes smelled of smoke, even when they had not been near a fire for days. Mothers kept their children indoors, afraid of the strange, oppressive air. And then came the wind. On August 20th, 1910, the Pacific Northwest was struck by a freak storm system. Gale-force winds roared through the mountains, fanning the flames like a blacksmith's bellows. Small, scattered fires exploded into monstrous walls of flame. Entire ridges caught fire in seconds. Embers the size of fists sailed miles ahead, igniting new infernos wherever they landed. What had been 1,000 separate wildfires became one single, unimaginable blaze. A firestorm unlike anything America had ever seen.